Hi, in this video I'm going to show you an introduction to Android Studio version 3 and some of the differences that you will see between this and version 2. And so the reason why that's important is that some of the tutorials that I've recorded for you are done in version 2 and there are slight differences. So here's an introduction to Android Studio and some of the changes that you would see in the new version. So I'm going to launch a new project here. And you will see, first of all, at the bottom here that we have some different languages that are supported that you will not get in the older version of Android Studio. So Kotlin is the new language, or relatively new language, that Google is pushing, and we are not going to use it simply because Java is still a great language, and that's the skill level that many of us are at. So I'm just going to leave it as a Java-only version. So I'm recording this video here in 2019. Which is going to show us the updated condition of where Android is now. So Android 8.1 is the newest version of Android that's out there on the phones, and they call that API version 27. So you can still build apps that are minimal for Android 4, which is probably a good idea, and that way 100% of the devices of your customers will be able to use your app. However, if for some reason there are new features that you need to use, of course you can bump this higher. So the same activities are listed in version 2 and version 3. We'll usually start with empty activity. So, as with before, the program takes a little while to create your newest project. And you can see at the bottom of the screen when I'm finished that it says Gradle build is finished in 8 seconds. So what is Gradle, you ask? Gradle is one of the Dependency Manager programs that you can use for Android. So Maven is a common dependency manager that you may have seen in the previous Eclipse lessons that we've done, and Gradle does the similar idea. So it takes libraries and automatically inserts them into your code. That's what a dependency manager usually does. So let's take an overview of some of the things that you will find in Android Studio. Now by default you get two images or two different files that are open. So main activity or activity main and main activity are both listed here. You can see that one of them is a Java program and the other one is an XML program. So XML is the design language for using your layouts. So if you want to think of it as the HTML of Android, that's pretty close, where you can create buttons and menus and decide where they sit on the screen. The Java programming here is the methods that are behind the buttons. And so they open these up by default. Now let's take a look around and see how we can view these things. So first of all, I'm going to take a look at the view on the right side here. So you can see my application is open. Yours might not look like this. There are different ways to view your layout. So I have design checked here. You can say blueprint, and you can see all the little wireframe outlines. You can also say, I want to see both the design and the blueprint, and they are side by side. So if I choose Hello World in the beginning here and I start moving it around, you can see it happens, the updates happen simultaneously on each side. So here the designs here are either design, blueprint, or both. And so I frequently work with design. Down here at the bottom is another important tab. So there's the Design tab, which shows you the application screen, and the Text tab. So depending on which you're more comfortable with, you will rely on it more. I tend to use both of them because certain things work better in text and certain things work better in design. Now here's a big difference that you will notice between version 3 of Android Studio and version 2. So at the top of the layout XML, you can see that the type of layout is called a constraint layout. Constraints are these little chains that are tying the label to the side of the screen. So a constraint says I'm going to be a certain distance from each edge. The previous versions of Android defaulted to a relative layout, and so that will be slightly different. So let's go check out design here. So the type of layout is first of all listed down here. It says constraint layout, and we have a text view on the screen. So I want to first of all delete the text view. Now if I want to put in a layout, I can go into layouts, and you can see that they do not include the relative layout anymore. You have to go into the legacy area and then drag in your other layout. So now we have a layout inside of a layout. Let's go look in the text view and see what happened. So relative layout showed up here, and it's inside of a constraint layout. So I could continue my development here just like I did before in my version 2 application. So in the following videos that I'm going to show you, we're probably inside a relative layout. So create this kind of a setup, and the application should look very similar to how we've designed it in the previous tutorials. Now it's time to go take a look inside of the folder called App. So inside of the Project Explorer, you can see that we have various folders with items in it. So let's go one by one and see what these things are. First of all, a manifest. Let's take a look and see what a manifest is. A manifest shows you all of the different libraries that are being used inside of your program. Probably won't need to worry about manifests in the first tutorials. In the Java area, you're going to see an area called main activity, which is very important to how we program. We'll be working with this file all the time and creating new classes inside of here. Testing is probably not something we're going to touch, but it is there if you wanted to do unit testing for your application. The RES folder, or the resources folder, is something we will be working in a lot. Let's start with the layout folder. You can see activity main is listed here. And so activity main is the program file XML that we will be working with a lot when we put buttons and menus on our screen. Drawable are all of the images that we're going to be putting into our folders. So we'll add graphics to our programs. We'll simply copy them into this folder here. The other folder in the resources area that will be important is resources called values. And so strings is where you would have things like the title of your program, and we will have my application listed here. So we'll be modifying this file quite a bit. So those are some of the important folders inside of app. Also, you will notice that there are ways that you can view your main project. So switching between these is sometimes necessary to get the view you want. So Android and project packages, you can change most of them. I think Android is where I usually work, so switching to the Android view is normal. Now another important feature of how to run your application is up here at the top. You just got the green arrow that you're used to seeing, and then as soon as you say run, you're going to have an option for connecting your phone. So right now you can see I have no phone connected, but I have something called virtual devices. Let's say you don't have any virtual devices yet. So to create a virtual device means you will have an Android phone on your screen. You can see it run, and it'll take a lot of memory for your computer. So you can choose any virtual device you want. The virtual devices are all listed according to brand names. I recommend picking something that is kind of on the low end. So don't pick the highest resolution thing in the list because it'll take more memory. I use the Nexus 5X, which seems to be pretty normal. You can pick any of these you like. So if I choose next, and then it says what version of Android is running on this phone, you can pick in, probably the most recent is good, version 28. And so if you want to choose an older version, you'll see that there's a download option. It'll take more time and more memory and more disk space every time you add a new API version on your phones. So let's choose next. Give it a name here. You can call this my favorite phone if you want, or you can use the name brand and then click the finish button. So about this time, after you've launched your phone, you're going to notice if you have enough RAM in your computer. And so you can see on my activity monitor, I am showing that I have used up 13 gigabytes of RAM, and I only have 16, and my computer's starting to run slowly. So start killing other programs, restart your computer, or better yet, the next option might be is to get yourself your own phone. So I have my $30 Android phone here, as well as my nice phone that I spent more money on. But I would plug this in and use it instead of the virtual phone. As you can see, the virtual phone's coming, but slowly. Finally, it's running. So in order to use a phone with Android Studio, you're going to have to do some modification to the phone. So I searched for a string, how to set Android phone to developer mode. So you have to go into your phone and actually tell it to allow these unauthorized applications to be installed and to connect directly to Android Studio. So you can see I've plugged in my phone now, and I'm going to try to run the program again. So this time it says connected devices, and I've got one here that says it's offline. Well, I click OK. It says to allow the application to run, and I've got a green light it looks like, so I click OK. And when I'm done here, it should automatically install. As you can see at the bottom of the screen, it's installing an APK, which is my Android program. And now you can see that I have an application running here. So it saves a gigabyte or more of memory if you run it on a phone here, and you can actually touch the menus and you can see how the phone works in real life. So I recommend plugging in your own phone with Android Studio. So that provides you with an overview of some of the Android Studio features, and especially with the layouts. You will be using relative layouts in some of the earlier tutorials, and you probably need to include that before you start programming. So let's get started with our first app.